Beautiful Cara. I am so excited to have you here, and I am preemptively impressed that we are going to have a relatively short conversation compared to our history and how I could talk to you for several days on end and still have more to say. So, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Wendy. It's truly an honor, and this is definitely a long time coming, I feel like. So, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my great pleasure. Okay, so let's just start off with the big question. How are you saying yes to yourself in this season?
So, I am trying to live more intentionally, more authentically, and more unapologetically.
Ooh.
I recently went through kind of a life-changing health journey with a chronic illness and was declared in remission. But going through that has really made me evaluate all of my priorities. Um, so yeah, that's my intention is to uphold those words. But I definitely I know that you're a fan of picking a word of the year. And for the last 2 years, though, I've been a little bit extra and I've had a hard time narrowing it down. So I've picked three. And I picked three in 2024 based on the fact that I was embarking on this health journey. Um, and my words were pivot, advocate, and simplify.
Mm.
Um, because I was on the verge of getting diagnosed with something. I had some strange symptoms going on and none of it really connected at first. And as time went on and I went to my naturopath and she did, all the things and she was stumped. I thought at first, like, I'm going through perimenopause. Like, okay, I'm of a certain age. This is where I'm at. Some of these symptoms line up. And, from all the podcasts and all the Instagram reels and everything that everybody sees right now, there's like a list of 35 or 40 symptoms. So I thought, well, it fits under that umbrella. And after the naturopath tried several things, she was like, these natural supplements aren't working. They're not working like they're supposed to. And
Mm.
something else bigger is going on. And, I went to several doctors. I went to my OBGYN. I was dismissed by her. She even if it had been perimenopause, she dismissed me and said, well, we're just about that age, so you're just going to have to deal with these symptoms.
Such an
And I
eye
thought,
roll.
yeah, exactly. And I thought, no, I don't have to just deal with these symptoms, whether it's perimenopause or something else. And luckily, I did not take no for an answer because it was something else and it was something much bigger. And after 9 months of blood work with the naturopath, she sent me on my way and I went to my endocrinologist and he did further testing and he said, yeah, your cortisol is like 6 times the normal person, and that is that hormone that controls so many things, I've found out. um, and it controls your blood sugar, your insulin. It's that fight or flight response hormone. So I felt like I was on an adrenaline high all the time because it was
Mm.
so high, and I wasn't sleeping because it was so high, and I was putting on weight even though I was eating so healthy and going through all my workouts that I normally work out that have helped me in the past. Like every program, nothing was working, and so, but even he was resistant. He kept telling me, you don't look like you're having these problems. You don't have that look that we
Oh
see
my
when people have
gosh.
high cortisol. And I said, because I'm fighting tooth and nail to like overcome these symptoms. Like I'm doing everything, I'm doing all the sleep hygiene, and none of it was working. And so he just kept making me go through all of these lab tests. And some of them for cortisol are not easy. It's not just blood work. There's some other things that I won't even get into,
I'm
but it's
sorry.
it's arduous and it's hard and you're staying up late and doing all these things. And he just kept having me rerun the same tests. And he said, well, before we do any imaging, we need to have concrete proof. And he's like, this isn't urgent. And I just looked at him and I thought,
World.
yes. And I thought, you know what? It's urgent to me, sir. Like, are you not sleeping? Are your
Right.
pants not fitting? Because I have no clothes that fit me. And I am spinning my wheels trying to feel better, and it's not happening. And so, come to find out, I finally got him to do some imaging, and I had a pituitary tumor, and it was causing me to have Cushing's disease. And there is a very specific look if you've had Cushing's disease for a long time. And I didn't have that look yet. And so I could tell the difference in my face. I could tell the difference in my body. But because I didn't look like the extreme version of someone that's had it for 5 or 10 years, they kept dismissing me.
Oh my goodness. And if you had the look, they would have told you, well, if we would have caught this earlier, we'd be able to do
Yeah,
something about it. My
exactly.
gosh.
And along those same lines, I found out that when one of the doctors looked back through my records, there was an MRI of my pituitary gland from a migraine history 9 years prior, and the tumor was there. And the radiologist did not note it, catch it, anything. So, had I known 9 years earlier that I had an inactive tumor, it would have been a much smoother path to
Sure.
diagnosis. So, it really, the word advocate for me was like in bold compared to the other words. Yes, I kept having to pivot, pivot, pivot. It was like, okay, now I have to try this test. Now I have to do this. Now I have to go to this doctor. And I had to simplify because I had zero energy and did not feel well and everything. But advocate was in bold because I could tell unless I pushed for it, I was not going to get anywhere in my diagnosis. And I signed up to have, they said surgery is the only option. And I
Wow.
signed up to have surgery with one surgeon. And then I got a really bad feeling about how he was planning this surgery and what final diagnostic tests he had done. They were all inconclusive. And I thought, I'm going to get a second, a third, and a fourth opinion because this is not brain surgery, but it's brain surgery adjacent. It's done by a neurosurgeon. Yes, they go through your sinuses, but it was scary.
Sure.
And it was certainly the biggest health crisis I personally had ever gone through. And so I did seek out other opinions, and a friend of mine pushed me to go to this one hospital system. And that is ultimately who I had my surgery with because it was someone that performs this same surgery several times a week.
Wow.
And and it was one of those things where every time I met another doctor, I was like, what is the feeling I get from this doctor? Is this doctor going to go to bat for me? Is this doctor going to exhaust every option? Is this doctor going to advocate for me? And if I felt like they weren't, or if I felt like they were inexperienced, I had one surgeon that was like, oh, yeah, we do 9 or 10 of these a year. We're kind of a boutique operation. And I'm like, well, it was lovely to meet you. I'm
Right.
going to be
Thank you.
moving on because I want the person that does this 9 to 10 times a month or a week. I want the best possible option that I can find. And ultimately, I did find the best possible option. They had the best aftercare. They had a specific endocrinologist that's trained in this disease because not only was it a scary surgery, but it was a long and extended recovery process.
Mm.
Because once you're robbed of that hormone and your pituitary gland is no longer talking to your adrenal glands and telling your body to produce it, you have to supplement with a synthetic. And it is a rough, rough process.
Mm.
And it was much longer than I anticipated. So I was so glad that I picked the medical team that I did and that I fought hard to find them. It was one of those things where you had to get a referral to get into that hospital. And I couldn't get a referral from certain doctors, and I had to wheel and deal to get into that system. And ultimately, it was the best choice for me.
Oh my goodness. First of all, I'm glad you're in remission. Yay, yay.
Yay!
Secondly, thank you for your generosity in sharing that. Thirdly, two things really stand out to me about your story that I think are really interesting. And I want to talk about these two things in addition to whatever you want to talk about, because sometimes when we hear about somebody's health journey
Mhm.
and it's not something that we're experiencing, we can discount the entire conversation, or not discount in a bad way, but just, oh, okay, well, I don't have, any issue like that, so I'm going to skip this. But I so believe that every story we happen upon has a nugget for us. And the two things that really stood out to me, because I know your journey, not because I'm a jerk and I'm not paying attention, but what I loved that you not only listened to and trusted your body while things weren't feeling right, you continued to do that with all of these visits. And when you felt like you were being dismissed, you used your words and spoke up for yourself, advocated for yourself, and you trusted how you felt in your body when you were talking to certain doctors, and you created deliberately the best case scenario for yourself. And the other way that you did that was with community, in that
Mhm.
you didn't isolate completely. You were still available to have a conversation with a friend who could make a suggestion that ended up being the right path for you to get you to where you are now. And I think that those are two practices that don't get as much airtime as we could benefit from. And that is not isolating when something scary is happening and listening to and trusting your body.
Exactly. Exactly. I felt that both practices served me well. Listening to myself was the biggest push that I could have given in order to find a diagnosis. It is a rare disease, but once I started speaking about it, it was amazing how many people came out of the woodwork that have either known somebody with it, found somebody that was recently diagnosed with it. I talked to several other people that was like, my brother-in-law had pituitary surgery, but he was having, this issue because of the pituitary gland, which was not my issue, but I could speak to them about the surgery experience and what the
Sure.
recovery was like. And then I would speak to someone else that had the cortisol issue that I had, and what was that recovery like? And then I spoke to two friends that were both working for the hospital system that I initially chose, and one of them had a pituitary tumor, but chose to have it at the hospital system that I went to.
Oh
And
my.
she gave me all the reasons she went to that surgeon and why she didn't have it. And so everybody's experience with Cushing's disease is different. And I think everybody's experience with any sort of medical issue is different. But there was a lot of common ground. And because I reached out to people like the friend that said to me, he very candidly said, you have one shot to get this right.
Mm,
This is a major surgery. And if you pick the wrong doctor, the complications from the surgery, because it is so close to the brain, can be very severe. And that hit home with me because I was so wrapped up in the process and, sending emails and making phone calls and making appointments and going things that you kind of lose yourself. You
yeah.
you lose your steam, and that kind of made me stop and think, okay, I need to like step back from this and really look at the big picture and check in with myself. And so that was a huge turning point. I mean, that shifted the entire process. And then also, initially I just shared it with a few close friends. And then as time went on, I did share it on social media and on my blog because I wanted to help other people. And
Mm.
there were several people that came out of the woodwork that were like, "Oh, I've had a similar issue and my doctor said just let it go." or I've had this health issue going on, and you've spurred me to like go do something about it. And it's like, yes, you get one shot at this. You get one shot at life, and like, why live through it feeling poorly? If you can be proactive with your health, I mean, that's something that only you can do, unless you have someone advocating for you. But it you can't go backwards, you
Right. I
can't
mean,
turn.
who's going to advocate for you like that? Your
Yes.
mother, if you are a 10-year-old, like you would advocate for your boys like
Exactly.
that. But
Exactly.
even as a grown up, your mom's not going to do that for you. It's just
Exactly.
no one's going to do that for you.
Yeah. And nobody's going to know what that feels like to be the
Mhm.
patient, to be the one that's being dismissed, to be the one that feels that terrible and has no answers and has no one, in your corner. So, yeah, it definitely, I think reaching out to people in two ways helped me. It helped share my story and help, put the thought in people's head that, oh, maybe I should take care of that. Maybe I should be more proactive. And then also, it empowered me to advocate more heavily for myself.
For sure. How long did you experience symptoms before you did something about it? Because I would imagine, even like me, okay, so I'm sore. Well,
Hmm.
I live on a flower farm. So,
Yeah.
like, to me, it's like, oh, okay. But I could imagine if something were to come up in the future that joint pain was an early symptom and I discounted it because of how I'm spending my days. So
Hmm.
I was just wondering, like, how, if was there a period of time that, of course, in retrospect, as you look back, I guess that was something. Oh, okay, that too, that they just get added up.
Yeah, I would say I started to feel a little bit off at first. And that's when I went to the naturopath. So that was like November of 2022 when I started
Okay,
meeting with her again. I called up and said, hey, I want to come back. I'd seen her previously for some other things. I feel like something's off. Let's do some testing. Um, and that's a great thing about naturopaths is I feel like sometimes they're a little bit more thorough with that investigative work.
sure.
And they do some things that are outside the box. I'm definitely um, you know, I appreciate both Western and Eastern medicine, and I've done all the things. I've done the acupuncture, but I've also seen all the Western medicine doctors and have specialists for just about everything. But I started with her, and partially because my OBGYN had dismissed me, and I didn't think I was going to get anywhere. And I was like, well, it feels like it's a hormone thing. And so it was probably, like I said, I did testing with her off and on for 9 months before she
Mm,
finally said, okay, we're trying all these natural supplements to calm down your cortisol. It's still high. You need to go see an endocrinologist. And so then it was another probably 6 months with him before I actually got that imaging done and got a
sure.
diagnosis. So
How how long before you saw the naturopath?
I would say 6 months.
Yeah,
So it was probably about, a year and a half to
sure.
diagnosis, which for someone with Cushing's is a short period of time. Some people, like I said, go 5 or 10 years not knowing. But because I was so aware of what fitness programs worked for me, what, eating habits had worked for me in the past, and I had had such a pulse on that, I was very aware when things were starting to go backwards and shifting, and I started feeling terrible. I was like, something is up. So
Yeah,
I was, had my finger on that pulse
right.
well before the symptoms started.
Yeah. Thank you for that because I feel like, you know, because as we age, things
Hmm.
change. But
Yes.
that is the most general statement ever.
Hmm.
So what does that mean? Does that mean everything I'm experiencing is just how it is now? Or what doesn't feel good and what needs to change. And yes, we can back up to like, well, you're a farmer, so you're sore. But I used to do this all the time and not be sore. So that's something that I'm paying attention to. There are
Exactly.
also, changes in my body. And like, I'm a farmer and I've been able to be this active and still have my pants fit. So if that's not happening, what is happening? And to have this discounted answer of menopause, which is like, is that what women in their 50s hear that in their 30s they would have heard fibromyalgia? Like it's just a word that we say that means we don't really know and you're probably making it up and it's not really a big deal anyway. Can you just finish making dinner?
Yeah. I think that women's healthcare in this country is grossly underfunded. Research is non existent. It is getting better. Like I said, I subscribe to all the podcasts, all the Instagram accounts. Oprah's talking about it. So hopefully it'll get some attention. But it is a huge process for women to go through perimenopause and menopause. I didn't even know that perimenopause can be a 7 to 10 year process until I started paying attention, and
Right.
that I am in that age group, and that much like several other diseases, it's happening earlier and earlier for women, and it impacts everything. And there are ways to find relief. And so now that I'm coming off of Cushing's, I'm like going into the next battle with
Right.
this. And but I feel like I'm more prepared for it.
Sure.
And I think that was one thing, having had this disease, it made me slow down. It made me reevaluate things. And it also, it's led me to advocate for myself in other ways. It empowered me to like say to my kids, like, you need to take more responsibility around the house, especially post surgery, because I was down
Yeah.
for months and I had to take steroids for 7 months after my surgery. And that's actually a very short period of time for someone that's had the surgery that I had and has had Cushing's disease, because some people have to take them for up to 18 months or sometimes for the rest of
Oh,
their life. And unfortunately, there's no diagnostic to tell you if you're on too much, if you're on too little, because they can't separate out the synthetic versus what your body's actually starting to reproduce. And when they remove that tumor, you get brought down to zero cortisol and you cannot live without that hormone. You literally will die within a few days
mm,
without that hormone. And I did not know that until all of this came about. And so I was ill over the summer and, trying to figure out the right dosage. And it made me reevaluate the fact that, like, I was doing too many things. My kids are getting older. They need to learn these life skills. They need to learn to, make a meal for themselves, do some laundry, change the sheets on their bed, like all the things that I do.
hmm.
And it was a good learning experience. And it also reminded me to ask for help. So I wasn't at the point of burnout, because there were days where I would do a few things and then I would be done. And that was it. That was all I had for the day. So it, it also made me not apologize so much for the little things or for basic rights. Like if I missed a birthday before Cushing's, I would be like sick about it and I would feel so bad and I would profusely apologize to the person, but I just couldn't do all the things that I did before.
Yeah.
And I would love to get back there. I would love to do all the extras, but I'm only capable of what I have the energy for in any given day lately. And it's getting better, but some days you just can't do it all. And, you know, I'm not going to put extra pressure on myself and I'm not going to apologize for, taking care of myself. I do have to remind myself to say yes to myself on a regular basis, which I think is something that most women need to do and practice.
Right. All day long, every day. Because
Yes.
it's not just, oh, that trip to France or, oh, I'm gonna have a cookie or whatever. It is a practice.
It
It's a
is.
an evaluation, a checking in, making the best decision for yourself in that moment.
Hmm.
And you know, I don't just say that and expect everyone just to, lay around or whatever because that's what feels good. It also doesn't feel good for many days in a row. So it's not like
Yes.
anyone's going to become, whatever, comatose and just
Yeah.
watching TV. Like none of us are like that. So it's not going to happen. And I understand the struggle. I get it. I'm a single mom on this really fabulous giant piece of property that recently got bigger. And I mow the lawn and I harvest the flowers and I cook the meals and, do all these things and record podcasts. And I have help and I need more help. And
Hmm.
coming to that realization, it's not a failure to ask for help. It's not, and
Exactly.
it doesn't always come the minute you ask for it. So it's really important to be
Yes.
preemptive, but it's just an underused muscle, at least for me. And I don't know exactly what I was making it mean, but I know that it doesn't mean I'm weak. I know that it doesn't mean that I'm not capable of doing it all. It's just not in service for me to do it all. But that is like, I have this conversation with myself multiple times a day because
Yes.
there are a lot of things that I love saying yes. Like I'm all over the yes, and I am full of good ideas, and I have all of these opportunities to be a part of magical, fabulous things that I know are here for me. And I am actively working on my relationship to support.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I fully agree with that because it's something that you constantly have to check in with yourself and try to hear what you're saying. You know, you need to be like, I'm really tired today. I just can't do all that. And it's okay to not do all that. You need to give yourself permission. You need to forgive yourself. Post surgery, I called it the bare minimum stage. You know, I'm a
Yeah.
type A personality and I like to run a tight ship and I'm super, task oriented. But I finally said, I'm not well. And as long as the bare minimum gets done, that's good enough for right now. This will not last forever, hopefully. And it was like, if there was dinner somehow, some way, whether it was DoorDash or having my husband grill or, having the kids cook chicken nuggets in the air
Right.
fryer, it may not be the gourmet meal that I'd hoped for, but if there was dinner, if the laundry was clean and the sheets and towels had been changed once that week, that was good enough. That was
Yeah.
all there was. And if the house was relatively tidy, great, that's a bonus. But as long as everybody was fed and clean and happy, and the kids had showered, it was all good. And so that was kind of my pivot because it was that was all we could handle as a family right then. And we did ask for help, and I got a lot of support. But on the days when no one could help because they had their own lives going on, we just did the best we could. And it was a year of, I felt like all I did was make plans and cancel them, which was disappointing. I
Mm.
missed two weddings that I really wanted to attend, but we just did the best we could. It just wasn't in the cards. We planned, and God laughed and changed changed course for me. And so, that was sort of the first stage. And then when I sort of started to feel better and felt like I was capable of a little bit more, I sat with myself and I said, now that I've crossed this hurdle and I have a little bit more energy and I'm feeling a little bit better, like, what's the first thing I want back?
Mm,
And that would really fill my bucket. And it was my morning practice. And I know you're a big advocate of
I am. I
that. I know
am.
you and I are both the early birds.
Yeah.
And so, because when you're ill, it affects your sleep. It disrupts your eating habits, your energy levels, your ability to move. And so I couldn't do everything, but I promised myself that if I got up every morning at 5 a.m., like I used to pre-surgery, and did, even if it was, I slow walked on the treadmill for
Yeah.
15 minutes. I just got up and moved and went through my routine that I do in the morning. That was that I would call that day a success.
Yeah.
And so I started just one day, I just decided, okay, if we're going to set the alarm again, there's no more sleeping in. It's been months and months. Even if you just get up and meditate and do something and start the day, because I feel like if you start the day by filling your own bucket and doing it
Hmm.
that way, especially when you have small children,
Yep.
that, the day could go sideways at any point,
Yep.
that as long as you have that time in the morning to yourself, you can call the day a success.
For sure.
Um, and it's so funny because so many people that I've told about, they'll be like, oh, what time do you get up? I'm like, 5. And they're like, why? I'm like, because it's quiet.
Yep.
I,
And I
I,
see the result.
yes,
And
I
now
see the
I'm
result.
committed.
I wake up on my own terms. I do something for myself.
Mhm.
And even if the rest of the day does not go as planned, I had that 1 hour that was mine. And I have children that have been early risers since they were little. And so even before I was ill, I started doing this and it's just become habit. My eyes pop open at like 4:45 or 5 and I'm up for the day and it just sets the tone for the day, which I
Yeah.
love.
I'm that is a non-negotiable for
Mm-hmm.
me. When I do travel, like if something happens, I might not keep my schedule, but I do keep my routine
Exactly.
because my commitment to myself is real and I
Yes.
have seen the beautiful results. And it really, if I had to choose only one life-changing thing that I've implemented in the last 5 years, that's what it would be. That
Yes.
connection to the divine at the first thing in the morning. Nobody wants to hang out with me if I haven't done that. And I used to be really fun, but now I'm aligned, and aligned is a lot more fun.
Yes. Well, Wendy, I've known you for 20 plus years.
Can you believe it?
You've always been fun
I have
since
always been
day
fun.
one.
True.
I remember when you were queen of the dahlias and you were just starting your empire. So,
I know. And it's so interesting. And this is my last season of Dahlias. I'm ready to complete.
you're retiring.
I am from the Dahlias. And
Yes.
it's been such a fascinating process as I was contrasting them to the peonies
Hmm.
that are so easy
Yes.
compared to the Dahlias. And I found myself saying, if I could just do the podcast, peonies, and Paris,
The three
that
P's.
would be amazing. And I live at the Phineas Wright House.
There you go.
Like, is that allowed? My mantra for 2025 is let it be easy, but can it really be that easy and that fun?
Yes.
So I was in a very long process with a lot of communicating with my dear friend Sharon and about what that would look like and what I mean it was getting very intense of the amount of my own personality I was putting onto the dahlias.
Yes.
It was really fascinating and enlightening to see. And once I was able to see that I actually am not the dahlia, and not abandoning myself, even though I survived in these very rugged circumstances. Um, it it really was an exhale to
Yes.
give myself permission to complete with something that I'm known for and um celebrated for because they are hard. And then it's like, is that really what I want to be associated with? When I think of hard work, I think of Wendy Harrop. I'm like, ugh, I don't want that to be true. So it was really a fascinating process. And I learned recently, we had this fabulous woman on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. Her name is Dina Barron, and she's an astrologer and does tarot and numerology and all these cool things. And she wrote a book, and she told us all that 2025 is a universal 9 year. And she explained all these things because I don't know what those words are. So she said, like, you add 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 is 9. And nine, the in numerology, the years only go up to 9. Instead of going to
Okay.
10, you go back to 1, unless there are double digits, but that's a whole other, you got to read her book for that one. But so this is a universal 9 year, which
Okay.
she explained means like it's coming to a culmination. So the things that you're being called to complete with, this is the year to do it, because if you're on the fence and it's December 31st, guess what? We're going into a 1 year, and you'll be carrying this baggage around for 9 more years.
Wow.
So she said, like, go through your closet, go through your drawers, go through your relationships, go through the apps on your phone, like all these things that are
Like
not,
a clearing.
it is a clearing, and it's happening universally because everyone in the world is in 2025 right now. So
Hmm.
there's a cleaning up and a clearing
Yes.
out that is happening globally that I think we're all feeling that in bits and pieces. And I just feel like having that information and looking at the things that I completed in 2025, my marriage, my dahlias, my beautiful relationship with these fabulous pants that I had before I had you. And I just love them, but they're, for the first time in my life after 25 years, are not fitting. And I don't, there's no price. There's no price for keeping them.
Yes.
So it's all been very, very fascinating. As you have that information, how does that make you feel about the things that you're completing with?
I, without knowing all of that background, I
Yeah.
feel like that has been happening for me this year.
Yeah,
I feel like 2025 is like a victory lap after
totally.
going through what I went through. I have a new perspective on so many things. I have been clearing out my closet. I'm calling it the high school reunion test because I was actually today supposed to be on a plane to my high school reunion. And for several health reasons, I was not able to travel today. And so I pivoted. And then you came to me and said, hey, we have to change the date of our recording. And I said, I'm available on that Friday because I'm not traveling. So
Yay.
it all works out. And I think that, yeah, like I said, I've just had this need to clear things out.
Yeah.
And whether it's clearing out your closet and being like, would I feel good in this at my high school reunion? No, this is not serving me. Because I come from like a family that, hangs on to stuff.
Hmm.
And my mother was like that. She hung on to every newspaper clipping and every sentimental item. And yes, I want to preserve my children's memories and I want to hold on to the things that are really dear, but I feel like you need to pick up everything and be like, is this serving me? Does this
Right.
actually mean anything? Or is it just the memory of where I wore this that
Hmm.
is is making me hang on to it, even though it doesn't fit and it may never fit again. And I think that being at the age that we're at, bodies change. And yes, I want to preserve myself and, try to stay healthy and try to stay fit, but things shift and you only have so much control over that. So, like you said, wear things that you feel good in and that fit and that make you happy, and clear things out in all areas of life. I kind of feel that need to kind of, I was listening to a book on tape the other day, and it was The Power of Regret and how
Mm,
going through that process can help you move forward. And it was very helpful. But I think if you can, stay true to what your values are, what you're advocating for yourself, and like we said, our morning practice is everything. And I heard a quote the other day and it made me think of you because
oh,
it was a friend of mine on Facebook, and she was a caregiver at one point to my mom who
oh,
has
wow.
dementia. And she's, a longtime nurse. And she said that her grandmother used to say, hope comes in the morning.
Mm,
And I was like, it does. That's what that 1 hour in the morning is. That is hope that you're setting the tone for the day.
for sure.
And it may not go the way you want, but there's always that hope. There's always that hope in the morning. And, you have to sometimes move forward just knowing your limitations.
Yeah.
Um, and, it's not always easy. I don't want to be limited but I try to, make the lists and set the goals where I think I can meet them and just stick to that if I can.
Right.
And,
And
you
we have these beautiful tools that we're accessing in the morning. We can go back to them in the afternoon.
exactly,
Yeah. I'm a
exactly.
student of A Course in Miracles, and the majority of the lessons are have a suggestion for every hour. Remind yourself what the lesson is. And so I have an
Hmm.
app on the phone, and so it tells me. And this today's is the hush of heaven holds my heart today.
Hmm.
And it just, how quietly do all things fall into place. That's such a beautiful, when I can every hour be reminded that the hush of heaven holds my heart today. Oh,
Yes.
thank you. Like, that's so sweet.
Oh,
Received. I'll take
yes.
it. So
Well,
these are
and you deserve
beautiful,
that.
right? And I love the reminder.
Hmm.
Before I let you go, I do have a question that I believe will be in service to all of our listeners, because what's most personal is most universal. When you said that you had a community that offered support to you and you allowed yourself to receive help, what kind of help and what kind of offers for help did you find significant and actually helpful in this process? Because I know, sometimes we hear someone is going through something and we want to let them know we care, and we say something like, if you need anything, let me know.
Hmm.
But that
Hmm.
is very broad, and and doesn't mean anything, doesn't mean. And so I have, in not wanting to be very broad, have said, I'm going to Target tomorrow. Do you need me to pick anything up for you? Just to kind of narrow what all the mental things they're managing in the midst of whatever this issue is anyway. But I'm eager
Exactly.
to hear, what did you find that stood out to you that as truly helpful?
I would say a couple of things. If I asked people in that were connected with the medical community for their advice, or when I was doing research on surgeons, I said, would you mind? Do you know this person? What do you think of them? What was your experience with them? So getting the actual information behind the scenes, especially for people that work side by side with some of these doctors, that was very helpful that they were so open about it. I know that not everybody would be, but everybody that I spoke to that was connected with the medical community was very willing to share. So that was a huge help in my decision making process.
Sure.
And just saying, would you mind sharing your journey with this? What was your experience? What did you go through? And I was very specific. I mean, one of the folks that went through the actual surgery, I was like, what was it like after?
Yeah.
When you woke up, what was it like after? And she was like, well, it wasn't pretty, but I'll tell you this, and this happened. And
Hmm.
it was good to sort of be prepared. I feel like it's kind of like when you have a baby, and if no one tells you and no one educates you on what's going to happen during the birth process and right after, you don't know. I mean,
Right.
this was new to me. I had zero experience in this area with this disease and with this surgery. So that was most helpful from like helping myself mentally prepare, and they were wonderful because all of them that were in the medical community continued to check on me,
Oh,
continued to
nice.
check in with me. So I would say like little notes from people was always helpful. Like, hey, I'm just thinking of you, especially if it was, a friend that was across the country that had experienced a different illness, but like, she's like, I just want to let you know I'm thinking of you, or, good luck on your surgery today. So I would say little thoughts. Um, Again, I'm a type A personality. I like things done a certain way,
Right.
and
So
I
help is
have
not always
trouble.
helpful.
Help is not always helpful, but I have a really hard time letting go
Mhm.
and having it done a different way,
Yep.
or not trying to control the process. So, with that
I have no
personality
idea
type,
what that's like.
no, not at all. None of us. So, I think the people that knew me best, like my two sisters, they were like, what are you going to do after surgery? You are transplants. You don't have any family in town. Like, who are you going to ask for help? And I was like, well, we're going to piecemeal this and do that. And they're like, no, you're not.
Mm.
No. When can we come? What's a good
Mm.
day for us to fly in? And so, I was able to get support, and they knew me well enough. And I would say the biggest help was one of my sisters saying, what is going to make you feel the best after surgery? And I
Oh,
just looked
that's
at
a
her
great
and I
question.
and I said, just keep the house from looking like a bomb went off. If my
Right.
house is clean and organized and that gives me calm.
Yep.
I purposely clean the night before when I go to bed at night, I want the house tidy because
Mhm.
I want to wake up and not see any work the minute
That's
I
right.
walk out the
That's
bedroom door.
right. That's right.
So even the room that I work out on, my shoes are set out.
Mhm.
My little shortcut is I sleep in my workout clothes. They are my pajamas. I roll
Brilliant.
out of bed and there's no excuses other than, like something goes sideways with the kids and I
Yep.
get interrupted. But I even want the room that I work out in to be
Mhm.
clean and organized. So if the kids have been in there the night before, I tidy it up. So when I walk in there, I'm just like, I
Right.
want a
You
sense
can
of calm.
yes, and go into the room for the reason you went into the room for.
Exactly, exactly. You're not tidying pillows and picking up
That's
dirty
right.
socks.
That's right. I leave it the way I want to find it.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that was the biggest, like, she was like, what is going to make you heal faster? What is going to make you
Mm.
feel calm? And I'm like, a clean house. And she was amazing. She stayed with
Yay.
us for 3 weeks. She knows all of my weird little quirks and was able to just be me because I wasn't able to be me.
Mm.
And so yeah, she was, both of my sisters were amazing, and it was great because they just were like, what do you need, when can we come? And even if it was later in the process and I was like, you know what, we're good, the fact that they offered um
Right.
was just great. And and then there's also people that just drop a bouquet of flowers on the doorstep and maybe don't ring the bell, but they just,
Right.
or drop a note on the doorstep, or bring a meal, or just ask, do you need a meal? And it was like, you know what, we're good. My sister had stocked the freezer, but thanks for asking. Like, or, and also just if they're saying, what can we do to help? you need to really think about what would help me. And sometimes it
Mm,
was, can you come pick the kids up and take
right.
them to go do something fun? Because
Yeah.
they're tired of seeing me be sick.
Yeah.
That was one of the greatest impacts, was that my kids were like, wow, mom's down. This is a
Hmm.
big deal. And to get them out of that environment so they could like just go be kids, as much as I loved the life skills that they were learning and being able to take care of me, and my little one knows how to make my coffee the way I like it now, and
Perfect. Well
my older
done.
one can make my eggs. Like, yeah, let's put that in the bank for Mother's Day. But
Right.
I also wanted them to not be totally surrounded by illness
Yeah.
and sadness all the time. And so just, coming to pick up the kids and take them to go do something so we could just have a few hours of quiet.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh,
I
that's
would say those were the
beautiful.
biggest things.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I think it gives us all a good idea of the questions to ask that aren't putting more of a burden or the responsibility on the person that we're intending to give assistance to.
Yes. Yes.
I love you so much, and I
Oh,
have
you too.
loved this conversation. I am delighted to hear that you are in remission. You've always been in
Yay.
remission as far as I'm concerned. So I'm happy that your body is catching up with what I believe about you. So thank you so much. Please tell everyone where they can find and follow you, how they can read the blog, all the good things.
So, yes, when I was on the verge of my diagnosis, I was also simultaneously creating a blog, not knowing that I was going out onto this big journey. And I just found that I was like repeating the same stories over and over. And I had
Hmm.
been kind of posting stuff to Facebook for a while, but I felt like less and less people were on social media. And so I started a blog, and it's called Gale Forced Wisdom. And I will give you the link in the show notes,
Perfect.
um, because it's got a very specific spelling. But I just moved all of my stories that I had had from years prior on there. And then I also used it as a way to update people
Sure.
during my illness, and talk about my thoughts, what I was going through. So that's kind of been the more recent entries, but I'm hoping for the future to. I've got a couple of exciting ideas for some new series. I did a series in 2019 called The 12 Days of Chaos, and that was counting down to Christmas with my children when they were very young, and it was a wild time. But it's the blog has sort of served as this like little time capsule, and it's a record. And I look back now at that series and I giggle because I'm like, oh my gosh, we thought that was hard. And boy, has it gotten so much harder, but I can find the humor in it now.
Sure.
And as I said before, I have my mom has been suffering from frontotemporal dementia for the last 10 years. And if going through that process has taught me anything, it's that like you have to preserve your memories. You have to take all the pictures. You have to write all the things down and have all the experiences, because you never know when that memory is going to, or your ability to remember anything is going to be robbed from you. Because while she's physically still able, she's mentally, not able to remember anything at this point. And it's been an eye-opening experience to go through it. And I started the blog because I was getting all these pieces of wisdom and advice, and I wanted to share it with other people because it's just been so helpful for me. And I feel like I've experienced a little bit of everything, but I'm an expert in nothing. And so I'm like, I'm just going to put this all in one spot. And, there's entries in there about grief, there's entries in there about health, there's entries in there about just silly stuff. And it's hopefully has something for everyone. So hopefully your listeners will find it entertaining and or helpful in whatever way they need in that moment.
Well, you are an excellent writer, so it is very
Thank
fun to
you.
read your work. Thank you for putting that
Thank
out in the
you.
world, and thank you again for your time. I treasure you.
Oh, I treasure you too. Thank you, Wendy. Love you.
I sure love you back.